Up Beyond the Veil. Decided to hop on the stream, do a little late night show for everybody tonight. We're going to be talking about a couple different things. We're going to be talking about, first of all, the zombie virus situation that we find ourselves in. There has been actually a connection to the Super Bowl event that was right underneath our noses, but we needed to do a little more research before we dug into it. For everybody on Patreon, I just want to take a moment and say I apologize for not getting that last show online. We got hit with that copyright violation and there was no way to get around it. And so we've got one pending copyright strike from Warner Brothers for The Matrix 4, which they never removed, and then another one from the NFL. So we got to be really, really, really careful with what we're doing on our channel. That being said, I'll try to get that show online for everybody, but everything in that show was 100% accurate. And going back to the lack of symbolism within the show itself. And there's a lot of people out there that are circulating all these conspiracies just simply because they don't know the history and the culture of hip-hop, N.W.A, Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, so on and so forth. However, it just seems like things are sometimes put into your sphere, into your consciousness, because there is a higher power out there, or an inner self, or the Tyler AI, or whatever you want to call it, that is telling you to look beyond the veil, look beyond the veil. So we've got all these conspiracies that are like all debunked about all the quote-unquote Masonic symbolism. But when you look beyond the veil as to what happened to Eazy-E, it paints a better picture as to what's happening right now in 2020 with a lot of people and this zombie virus. I will explain more when we get into the show. And then we're going to get into the astrology of Pluto. Shuri's joining us today for a short period of time. And then we're going to get into the Raw Mission 3 too, because it looks like it's go time. I mean, everywhere I turn, I see the next site. And a lot of people don't even realize that they're posting it, but I'm seeing it over and over and over again. I mean, hell, I was at the casino earlier. I just happened to go to a random slot machine. I go to the slot machine and it's called Goddess of Fire slot, and I go and I look at it and it's like boom, symbolism all over the place, and I'm like, oh man, I can't even freaking go and enjoy myself without seeing the symbolism just thrown right in my face. The call from the higher self, or whatever you want to call it. So we're gonna get into all that, so let's get into it.
The sky so far away tonight, but I can't lose this one. Get a pride of a falling night. Thought that I was fit to fight for us to be. You gave me life for loving me. Tell me, where did we go so wrong?
Raw consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself and the power to access it. Remember this, as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm Chris Gio. I'll be taking you beyond the veil this evening. I'm joined, of course, by my lovely wife and co-pilot, Mrs. Gio. You gotta unmute yourself.
Sorry. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Mrs. Gio. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
I'm
excited to be here tonight because today is actually the happy it's not the solar return, Pluto return today. I think it's 284 years or 248 years, somewhere around there. Every 200 and something years, we go through what's called a Pluto return, where Pluto returns to its place in the solar system, where it kind of like, not solar system, but the place astrologically where it comes through in a cycle, and we are finally going through that again. And when we have Pluto going through its return, we have a lot of upheaval having to do with societal change that has been necessary for a very long time. So everything's been culminating up to this point. it's very exciting, actually.
That is fantastic. You're looking beautiful today.
Oh, thank you very much.
Just for anybody out there, I don't want to go too much into your personal stuff, but we got into this car accident about 18 months ago, and we're finding out that there's actually a lot more damage than first anticipated, and that a lot of things were missed in the first few steps. So we're having to deal with all of that internal damage and also damage to the bone structure as well, which has been causing a lot of issues like the inability to eat and, things like that. So they're waiting to do everything that they need to do right. Now, there's nothing life-threatening going on, but it is pretty painful and pretty taxing. So,
it's just exhausting.
I just wanted to acknowledge that real quick because it's been a really rough ride.
Yeah,
and,
a little rough around the edges. That's probably why.
No, the reason I'm saying that is that forgive us for not doing regular shows,
doing regular broadcasts.
But we've got to take care of these avatars and get these avatars back in a position to where we can go to this next site and take care of business and do it the right way. It's just things keep getting delayed with your healthcare situation. And as I said in the previous show, that's the problem when you have universal healthcare. It doesn't matter what insurance you have, you wait in line with everybody else. And something that should take a couple months takes a year to take care of. But I'm just letting the energies just kind of guide the situation because I thought we needed to go in March of 2022. I don't think that's going to be possible given the current physical situation. But maybe it's not meant to be done in March of 2022. So maybe it's meant to be done later. Maybe December of 2022 when the countdown clock of the Matrix reset ends and the new phase begins for whatever it is coming up.
Well, it's like Sonia Barrett used to say, a good friend of ours that we've had on the show many times in the past, Sonia Barrett, she would say, anything that's happening right now is supposed to be happening. And so don't ever look at your life situation and say, oh, I'm supposed to be somewhere else. Wherever you are is wherever you are because that's where you are. And that's where you need to be. If you weren't where you need to be, then you wouldn't need to be where you need to be. You wouldn't need to be where you are if where you were wasn't good for you.
I agree and I disagree.
You disagree?
Yeah, there's obviously, we live in a world of duality.
Yeah.
Up and down, left and right, man and woman, zeros and ones. Zero meaning power off, one meaning power on. So you've got to look at both sides of the coin. And so, sometimes you're in this situation exactly where you need to be. Other times, if you're not walking your higher path, then you're not in the place where you need to be. And so, I try to balance all that out. But the way that things are right now outside of our control, the way that I'm reconciling it is that, yes, we're supposed to be in this holding pattern that we found ourselves in until the right time for this greater mission that needs to be done. And I can already tell, you're looking like 100% different than you were just a few minutes ago before we started the show.
I feel a lot better even just now. So
awesome.
Just being with you guys and being here with you guys tonight is going to help a lot. And even if I'm not as involved as I usually am, I have been going through a lot lately. So if I seem a little distracted, it's because I do have a lot physically going on. However, I am still me, and being who I am gives me a strength that I think a lot of you can relate to. Because when you know who you are, you're a lot stronger than you think you are capable of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't want to go straight at BTV Tribe right off the bat. I'm kind of saving that for the Patreons, but it kind of feels both of us together like we're being unplugged right now. And I got a message the other day from somebody on Facebook, and it was such a heartfelt message. And he's like, Chris, Cherie, I don't know why you guys want to bail out on us, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, it's not that we want to bail out. It's just they're waking us up out there. And I think that other people are also feeling that too. And so the result of that is physical breakdowns here, regardless of what we're doing.
Yeah.
We lasted through this whole pandemic situation with no problem, without getting sick or anything like that.
Exactly.
But it's weird because we're having synchronistic things happening. We're having synchronistic dreams. This evening, maybe this sounds kooky, maybe it doesn't.
This is weird.
It was very weird. all of a sudden we're eating, right? And I'm sipping on a glass of water and she's eating something. We both start choking at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just choked on my freaking water. What the hell's going on here? And you choked on whatever it was.
I choked on a piece of bread.
And it felt like they on the other side are doing kind of tests.
Yeah,
you know,
gag tests.
The way you described it is like when somebody's in a coma, they'll do a gag test. And they're doing it on us both simultaneously from over there.
Right.
And
it worked.
And it worked, yeah. So we're getting more and more kind of synchronistic kind of things like that. And that's the thing about being in a twin flame relationship is that you are energetically connected. So when one twin is going through some shit, the other twin is also going through it as well. And there is no breaking that connection. I mean, you know, you can try to shield yourself from whatever it is to kind of maintain the strength for the other one, but you're always going to be connected like that.
You're in it together.
You're in it together. Yes.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
For better or worse.
But I do want to say I am so proud of each and every one of you out there who have made it this far without getting the you-know-what stuck in you. You've made it this far without wearing the you-know-what on your face. And we're almost there, man. We're almost there. I mean, you know, we have major stuff going on in Canada, major stuff going on in Australia. There are two ways to look at this. The way that I'm looking at it is that this was a show of their weakness. The whole Super Bowl situation that happened, they weren't able to do any rituals. They weren't able to do anything like that. And there's a lot of people out there, they have a fear addiction. And the thing is, okay, fine, come on. Come on. We'll stop the show for you.
I am so sorry.
Come on.
Ladies and gentlemen. They do this every time. We can't. This is why we can't go anywhere with them.
All right.
Because they have to
be here.
They have to be involved.
So, I was reading this note from a doctor, and this was in L.A. He was a psychiatrist, and he said, and in this note that he sent out to all his patients, he says, I will no longer condone any type of child abuse in my office. If you bring your child wearing a face covering, I will consider that child abuse, and I cannot sit back and allow you to do that to a child. I've noticed in my patients that there's been a decrease in development. There's been anxiety, fear, all this stuff going on in children, and I will not let you do that in my office anymore. And I've also noticed in my adult community that there is a fear addiction. And I was like, okay, first of all, I don't know if the letter was real or not, but I suspect that it is. Second of all, the idea of fear addiction. I thought to myself, oh my God, that's a brilliant term. And that's exactly what's happened over the last couple of years is they've conditioned people to have a fear addiction. And because of that fear addiction, they're seeing everything. I mean, it's like they're scared little children, just, like scared of everything and huddled up and sitting in the corner and not wanting to go out, not wanting to do anything and not wanting to interact with everybody. And I'm sure you've ran into those kind of people out there when you're walking around without your thing on your face and they're looking at you like you're infected and all of this. But it's also spread into the quote unquote truth movement community. And the whole Super Bowl situation was a perfect example of it because there was no Masonic or satanic symbolism in there at all. Yet people were making it up and making it up. And it got to the point to where I replied to a couple posts saying, hey, look, here's the truth about this. Here's the truth about that. You can go to the last video and you can see what I'm talking about. And people were just blocking me. And it was like, well, why would you block me when I'm bringing you really good information? Why wouldn't you consider that information or tell me that I'm wrong because of one reason or another? Instead, no, just block, delete message, ignore, don't let people see the truth. And I started to ask myself, is this really a situation where they're trying to prop up that fear by not having anything in there at all and letting people make up what it is, regarding that situation? And I came from a very interesting vantage point and background, and now I'm starting to connect situations in my life. I grew up rapping. I grew up with rap music, and I grew up with N.W.A, Eazy-E, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, all of them. So I know the history, I know the culture, I know everything. Eve After Dark is the club where they recorded Boys in the Hood, as I said in the last video. The Tam's Burgers number 21 is where Suge Knight did a hit and run, and somebody ran up to him with a gun, and he drove backwards and then drove forward, ran over the guy, ran over one of the filmmakers for Straight Outta Compton as well, and took off, and he's serving 28 years in prison. So all these were like signs from the culture and things that have happened in the past. There was no, it didn't, Tam's Burgers 21 didn't represent human meat. Eve After Dark wasn't some kind of satanic occult symbol or anything like that. It was, there's a logical background to this. However, when you look beyond the veil, what I found, and I don't know if this is just, I happen to be in a unique perspective to be able to find this, but there is something actually a lot more sinister, and that whole Super Bowl situation might have been a little bit of a revealing. Put no symbolism out there whatsoever, put nothing out there. Let people create the fear on their own, but at the same time, there's something so deep and so sinister that that's being disclosed without anybody realizing it. So let me take a couple of steps back really quick. So N.W.A. is a rap group from the 80s, mid to late 80s. They were approached by a guy named Jerry Heller. Jerry Heller was a Jewish record producer. I have a picture of him here. Let me make sure I put the right screen on. Okay. So they recorded Boys in the Hood in the studio at Eve After Dark, and it was originally supposed to be just for Compton, just local kids. They were like 15 years old when they were doing this, just putting out some music and all of this. He approached them, and he approached Eazy-E and said that he can get them into the record companies and, all this stuff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they became business partners, and Eazy-E and Jerry Heller connected. Now, there is a conspiracy, as I said before, that what the powers that be wanted to do was fill up the private prison industries by glamorizing crime and glamorizing all of that in order to build up their private prison industry stocks. I don't know if this situation is tied into that or if that supposed meeting, took place after the fact. But I know that all of a sudden, at this point in time, hip-hop, which goes out to a lot of people, changed from hip-hop, hippie, and Don't Stop to Boys in the Hood. And they had a hot sound, they had a hot beat, great voices, great lyrical content, and all of that. And Jerry Heller put out Straight Outta Compton. So I'm going to give you the quick rundown really quick. So that lasted for a brief period of time. Ice Cube and Dr. Dre were getting screwed over in the whole situation. Jerry Heller was screwing over Eazy-E. And as it turns out, he wound up just completely screwing him over. Now, Jerry Heller died in 2017, and he says, no, that's not the case. I made N.W.A. what they are. I brought them out to the spotlight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they all moved away from him. And Ice Cube was the one that broke off and first, and then Dr. Dre followed afterwards. Dr. Dre then connected with a guy named Suge Knight. Suge Knight is this guy here. Freaking lunatic. I mean, he's just, freaking lunatic.
Insane. He
was in the car with Tupac right here in Las Vegas, right here on Tropicana, when Tupac was killed. And he went up to Dre and he created Death Row Records with Dre. And Interscope Records got in the middle of it, and they managed to get Dre out of the contract that he had with Ruthless Records, which was still run by Eazy and Jerry Heller. So Suge started to take over. He started out as a bodyguard in Las Vegas, and then went on to become the co-founder of Death Row Records. So there's an interesting interview with Suge Knight. Dre wound up leaving. Let me back up for a second. Dre wound up leaving, and he created Aftermath. And Suge Knight went to jail a couple times, and then now is doing 28 years in prison for that situation that happened in 2015 at Tam's Burgers 21. But he came out on Jimmy Kimmel's. And this is all going to tie into the zombie virus. Okay, so bear with me here. I'm trying to tell you the story as quickly as possible because I don't want to go into a whole documentary about it. But it's really, really, really crazy. So he went on with, actually, I'm not going to play it because we have so many copyright strikes on our channel that I'm not going to risk it. So he goes on, okay, let me back up. N.W.A. breaks up. Dre starts Aftermath. Tupac gets shot. Dre breaks off from Dre breaks off from Death Row. They created Death Row. Dre breaks off from Death Row, creates Aftermath, and then Suge Knight started doing his own thing, and then he wound up in prison. So that was at the time when Biggie was also killed as well. So Eazy-E all of a sudden died of AIDS. He died of HIV. And Suge Knight goes on with Jimmy Kimmel, and he starts making jokes and saying, you know, they have a fast-acting HIV that can kill you just like that. He's like, same as what happened to Eazy-E. And I thought to myself, wait a second, there's something to this. A fast-acting HIV that can kill you within a matter of a couple weeks. So I started watching interviews. I started watching interviews with Bone Thugs. After the whole split, Ruthless brought in Bone Thugs and Harmony. And they did Creeping on a Come Up, and it was freaking phenomenal. And Eazy-E did For the Love of Money with them. So right when Bone Thugs was going to release East 99, which was their biggest album, their next album, Eazy-E dies all of a sudden just like that. So I'm listening to Lazy Bone. And Lazy Bone is talking about how the way it happened over a course of 3 months. All of a sudden, Eazy started feeling sick, but he was like strong as a rock. You know, this is Lazy Bone's words himself. Eazy was hard as a rock, strong as a rock. They were wrestling around. You know, they were fighting. They were roughhousing. You know, they were doing what kids do. And then a month later, he started developing a respiratory infection. A month after that, he was dead. And Kid Frost, who was a Latino rapper who was signed to Ruthless, who then went down to Houston and did some stuff with SPM and Dope House Records and all of that, he also did an interview that I was watching. And he was talking about how everybody knows that Eazy was killed with a weaponized, quick-acting HIV protein that can be injected through a needle. And Eazy-E was getting acupuncture. And Lazy Bone was saying, you know, you don't know what doctors are you don't know what doctors are part of them and are not. So it's very likely that Eazy-E was stuck with something that's quick acting like that and killed him within a matter of 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Now Eazy-E has a wife. Eazy-E has a son, Eazy-E Jr.
He has 12 children.
Does he have 12?
He has 12
he has 12 children.
Yeah.
Not a single one of them contracted HIV.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a single female that's come out and said, I got HIV from Eazy-E. I started to make these connections, and I'm asking myself, why is it that they put Dr. Dre on in the Super Bowl just now, in the middle of the zombie virus, and there's no symbolism, no rituals, no nothing like that at all. Once I looked beyond the veil, I realized it's got to do with the respiratory infections that people are experiencing right now. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Mm-hmm. At the very beginning of this, we said that the zombie virus had an HIV spike protein in it. I think we were onto something back then. Now, when you type it in, a lot of people will dispute it, and they say that the thing that goes inside of you, you know, again, the vacation. Mm-hmm. That's what we use here on the show. The vacation acts like that. 3 months, same timeline. I had a friend that took it. 3 months later, gone, just like that. Respiratory infection. It gets into your chest. It starts to harden up. And I remember when you and I got it back in March of 2020. That's exactly what we were feeling. We were feeling our lungs starting to like mucus was
It
getting
gets
hard.
boogers in your lungs.
Yeah, but like hard.
Yeah,
hard mucus.
hardened boogers.
Like, you ever driven your car across country and you get the bugs stuck to your car? If you leave those bugs and don't wash it, they will turn to like a cement.
Yeah.
And you can't get it off.
It's impossible.
That's the way that this starts to harden in the lungs. So what did we do? We did a bunch of AyaLife, AYALife.com, or CBD oil. I might plug that a little bit later. We sat in a hot tub for like 2 weeks. Every day we'd be in the hot tub for 2 or 3 hours to open up the lungs and let all of that hot steam into the lungs. A lot of teas, a lot of things like that. We made it through just fine. So the question is this spike protein in the zombie virus itself, or is it in the vacation, or is it in both? However, the connection to a quick acting HIV strand is there. And it's been used since at least 1995.
Yeah. And so let me explain a few things here. There are 2 strains of HIV. Well, 3 actually. There's the HIV-1 that they found originally in Africa, and the earliest blood sample for that actually goes back to 1959. The reason why 1959 is an important date is because in 1957 there were oral polio vaccine trials in Africa, in the middle of Africa. There were OPV vaccines. OPV trials, and they were great. They seemed to work out great for the population, except a few years later, they did a bunch of tests, and they found that there were quite a few samples in this one place in Africa where they did these trials. And so that strain, though, is very different from the strain that you see here in the United States. The strain here in the United States is actually number 2. It's that same thing except HIV-2. And that's found in the United States. The fact that this person was able to contract this and die within a very, very, very short period of time.
Eazy-E.
Yeah. Is very suspicious to me, and especially the fact that none of the family members that were in close contact with him, none of the sexual partners, which is said to have been in the hundreds, if not thousands, of sexual partners, none of them have come forward. Like you said, there's nobody that seems to have gotten this. So it doesn't make sense unless it was number 1.
Here's what's interesting, is they're saying debunked. The zombie virus vacation does not create variants of HIV/AIDS. When you click on it might not be this article, but I've clicked on similar articles like this. It says that the vacation that they were using that contained the HIV spike protein was called off during clinical trials. Why in the hell would you even consider putting an HIV spike protein in a vacation, even for clinical trials? Like, why was that even a thing? I think what it is, it's because it's disinformation and misinformation, and it's to cover up what's actually going on. They've released this same thing that they hit Eazy-E with, and they've probably hit many others too. Who knows how many others? And now they've released it for population.
Going down.
Going down.
Going downage.
Again, we're trying to
going
duck and dodge.
Yeah, I'm trying to duck and dodge the AI
here.
too.
But I think we're onto something here. And the whole Super Bowl halftime show was the catalyst that sparked this research. I hope that I delivered this concisely, because I want to be quick, because I know you guys aren't interested, or a lot of people out there, the majority, aren't interested in the history of rap music.
Yeah.
But to me, it means a lot, because I grew up, and that was my inspiration, that I started doing rap music, which then led to me doing rap music for a record company, which then led to me doing Global Resistance, my rap album, over at chrisgeomusic.com. And that was truth-based music, which then led to me doing a radio show, which then led to me doing Beyond the Veil. Also, these guys here were fighting censorship way before we were. When they came out with F the Police, the FBI sent them a memo and said, no, you can't play this. And they actually got arrested in Detroit for playing that song. But the FBI went after them and they were like, hey, fuck the FBI, fuck all these people. We're not going to let people censor us. So they were fighting censorship going all the way back then. Two Live Crew, another one who was actually censored. So they paved the way to create monumental court cases that restrict the censorship of music and art. Now, in 2022, they've just bypassed that and they have outsourced the censorship to quote-unquote private companies, which is why we have to speak the way we do here on YouTube and several other places like that. But these guys paved the way, and they were fighting the fight way before we were fighting the fight. So regardless of what you think about the music, regardless of what you think about the culture, this is very, very, very important and relevant to what's going on now.
You know, and people need to understand that there's a difference between a disease and a syndrome. And AIDS is actually not a disease. It's not a disease. It's not even a V word that we bring up. It starts with a VI. It's not even that. It is a syndrome. And it's a syndrome that's characterized by a series of infections. And being able to get infections very, very easily, and then very small infections that usually don't do any damage at all to the immune system, that the immune system is usually able to knock it out of the park with no problem, the immune system not being able to fight against these infections. So when we're looking at what AIDS is, and then we compare it to what we're seeing, it's almost indistinguishable. Like, almost is not even a word. It's indistinguishable, period.
Now,
from one another.
Let's think about this. Forget about the terminology. Forget about the terminology HIV. Forget about the terminology AIDS. Just think about it at its core level. What is it? Killing the immune system. Killing the immune system through a respiratory infection. And that's what happened to Eazy-E. He started getting cough, then chest pains, then he was in the hospital dead within a month after that. Just like we're seeing now.
Right. And in 1960, this actually goes back to the 1960s when the Department of Defense was actually looking for exactly something like this, something that they could give a population that would not kill them, but would make them sick and not able to fight infection. They actually wrote this in the documents in 1960. We need to find agents that are able to bypass the immune system and are able to attack the body relentlessly with infections over and over and over again until that person finally just dies and succumbs to massive organ failure because of these infections.
Well, think about this. If you want to do something like that and take no responsibility for it whatsoever and try to cover all your bases, you want to stagger it. You want a staggering effect.
And you also want unlimited funding for government research into these programs that's never ending. It just keeps going on and on and on because you can't cure it.
Well, and they're going to the Supreme Court now, and they're asking the Supreme Court to block the results of the clinical trials for 75 years. 75
years. Our grandkids and great-grandchildren are going to have trouble figuring out what happened here if this is allowed to happen.
Covering it up for 75 years. Yeah, that's where we're at. So that link right there, I think, is just, that was what I was looking for when I was looking at this whole Super Bowl situation. So thank you for bearing with me while I went through all of that. But
me as well, yeah.
You know, it's such an inspiring story because you see these kids from Compton growing up and becoming billionaires, you know, just through their talents and all that, redefining music, redefining censorship laws, you know, redefining all of that. And it's just, it's the remarkable story for my generation. and inspiration. And I look back at my life and I'm like, man, I could have done so much more. These guys were releasing their first album at 15 years old with a minimal amount of musical equipment and all this. So yeah, it's not only is the story really deep. I would, if you're interested in it, I would watch the movie Straight Outta Compton. It was very well produced. It was a $50 million budget, and it wound up grossing $160 million. They had everybody there on the set, except for Jerry Heller, to go through how everything happened. And it shows the part about Eazy-E dying. It goes into all of that. It doesn't go into how he died. It goes into how he died, but it doesn't go into the fact that he was poked, nothing like that. That's after the fact. That's stuff that I found by researching and seeing what other people in the close vicinity had to say about it. But it was a great movie and an inspiring story on how the entire world can change based on just the love and passion of music. And a lot of people say, oh, aren't these Illuminati puppets and all that? No, these people were anti-Illuminati. These people were anti-government. These people wrote a song called Fuck the Police. Tupac was all about talking about the Illuminati all day long, and he was murdered very quickly as a result. So yeah, I don't think these guys are on that side over there. Dre even has a song that says, I ain't waiting for Illuminati, I'm trying to buy an island with, on my own, and et cetera, et cetera. So they acknowledge them and are like, yeah, no, we're not doing all that. Now, I would say that yes, the music and pop culture has been taken over through symbolism and all that, but it didn't have to do with these guys. It had to do with the guys that came later. It had to do with the Kanye Wests. It had to do with the Jay-Z's. It had to do with all of them. And see, that's why they got rid of all them, because you can't have independent people out there with that much pull.
Right.
So we saw a lot of people, Selena, I can name so many, who start to get bigger without being tied into somebody, and all of a sudden, boom, they're eliminated from the game.
Yeah.
As a result.
You were talking about Suge Knight earlier, and I have to say, I think that the controllers, for lack of a better term, the people that decide who's going to be big in this music industry and who's not, I think they realized in the late 90s that it actually is dangerous not only to have people like Tupac and people that we've mentioned that are protagonists of liberty and all that. It's also dangerous to have people like Suge Knight in the industry where you can't control them, where they're they fly off the handle, they hurt people, and then they if it would make a lot of sense to me if there were connections to three-letter agencies under the table that were going on back in the day when all that was happening, and it would make a lot of sense because didn't you say
if there was, it came from this guy?
Didn't you say that they were telling certain people to go into the rap industry and make it all about drugs and violence and stuff, when it was really about fighting the power and fighting, fuck the police and all that?
Yeah. Okay.
It went from that to...
There was a story circulating, and I can't verify any of this, but the story's there. You can Google it and look at it. But according to them, all of the Zionist, I don't know if that's a good word to use or not. I don't know if that'll get us flagged or not. Music producers, because they do run Hollywood and they run the music industry too, got together and decided that they got some of the rappers in there and said, we can make you super rich. All you need to do is just change your messaging, and we're really going to push for the glamorization of crime and all of this. The thing is, I don't know how much I believe of that story, just simply because at the very beginning of N.W.A's career, they were being interviewed and they were under a lot of controversy, and Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife, was the one that was really going after him the most. And she's the one that put the little freaking stickers on all the albums. But Tipper Gore was trying to get him banned. All of them was trying to get all the politicians were trying to get him banned. So at that point, they were saying, look, we're not glamorizing anything. This is a reflection of the reality that we're living with right here in Compton, California, in the late 80s and early 90s.
If you don't like
this isn't glamorous. And I love what Ice Cube said, because in that movie, it really echoed the stuff that really happened almost word for word. It was brilliant, because I looked it up after the fact and I watched the interview and I was like, wow, they really got this movie accurate. He said, we don't bring in AKs. AKs come from Russia. We don't bring in heroin. Heroin comes from China. So you guys better check the sources, because it ain't people from Compton and the inner cities that are bringing all this stuff in. And I was like, oh man, boom, checkmate. What a freaking brilliant answer. So there was a big problem, and there was a big problem with police brutality. I mean, the way that they would treat them is just unheard of. Like, sometimes it still happens a little bit in New York right now, the stop and frisk, but they were doing stop and frisk, unconstitutional searches, unconstitutional arrests, all kinds of stuff like this. And they didn't have the internet to go out and really understand how to handle themselves in a police encounter. And we're lucky that we do. And so we are able to watch attorneys and lawyers and, people like that who say, do not talk to the police, don't say a word, all of this. And I remember that show Cops. You remember Cops? Mm-hmm. Cops basically trained people to give up their constitutional rights whenever they get into a police encounter. I mean, because that's all they were showing. They weren't showing the guys who were saying, no, I refuse to talk to you. They were showing the guys who were just talking and talking and talking and saying this and saying that and all kinds of stuff like that, and doing everything the exact opposite of what you would want to do in a police encounter. But when I started to look at the constitutional violations of these people and what they were dealing with, not only in Compton, but in a lot of the major inner cities, I was appalled at the lack of constitutionality that the police officers were operating under. And that's the thing. They didn't know their rights. They didn't know to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to talk to you. They didn't know any of that. And they're still getting away with it in New York with that stop and frisk.
Yeah, they weren't willfully ignorant.
But they shined a light on that problem.
Right.
They shined a light on that problem, and there was a massive change as a result.
That is different than what we see with certain elements of society in 2020. Totally 100% different from that. What we see in 2020 is willful ignorance of the way the way things are, in lieu of some kind of like fantasy world, where fantasy gets to rule the day. It wasn't like that. It was, these people were trying to shine light on a very serious problem that the rest of the world was just kind of ignoring, even though it was a very serious problem. And these people weren't willfully ignorant of their rights. They were being held in a position to where they weren't ever educated about their rights, and they were kept from being educated about their rights.
Right.
That's different.
You know what I would love to do? I just don't think that they'll let me do it. I'd love to go to local high schools and do a little assembly with the seniors, maybe the juniors, and talk to them about constitutional rights. Talk to them about, stuff like that, and stuff that they don't teach us in school. They don't teach us how to play the stock market. They don't teach us, how to use credit to our advantage. They don't teach us that credit card debt can be used to boost your credit. But at the same time, you have to pay it off within the 30 days. Otherwise, you're going to fall into a credit hole that you're never going to get out of. They don't teach you how to even do your taxes. They don't teach you your constitutional rights. They don't teach you how to act in a police encounter. I would love to teach kids that. They're not going to let me go do that. But luckily, there's plenty of people who are, and everybody has access to that information now. But yeah, no, the whole BLM movement, they took a problem that has already been dealt with, but exists in little small pockets compared to what was going on back then. Back then, it was just so prevalent. I mean, it was bad back then. And that was a COINTELPRO movement, a controlled opposition. That's a better word for it. Controlled opposition. Joe said something earlier in the chat I wanted to chime in on, but I lost the comment as I started. Oh, the satanic panic of the 80s. Exact same thing. Satanic panic. They had everybody convinced that babies were being boiled in daycares by Satanists and heavy metal music, when in actual fact, it was the Christian missionaries like Laura Silsby, Hillary Clinton, all of them that were the real culprits and perpetrators. So it's like they will point the finger at everybody and everything, and it comes right out of the art of war. Blame the other person for what it is that you're doing. That way you keep them on the defense. They're having to defend themselves. Everybody's attention is pointed towards the other direction. Meanwhile, you're the one that's actually doing whatever you're accusing the other person of doing. And I'm watching this happening over and over and over and over again and repeated throughout history. And unfortunately, it's generational. So our generation remembers it. The current generation doesn't. We have to teach them. The next generation is not going to understand. Right now, what is it, 2022? That's 21 years after 9/11. So the kids who were born on 9/11 and after are turning 21 and they're able to drink now. But even going back 5-10 years, they were little kids. So they didn't know what it was like before 9/11. Our generation doesn't know what it was like before we were born and what it was like in the 50s and the 60s. And there was a lot of changes. We had civil rights movements, women's rights movements, some controlled, some not, but it all wound up in something positive. Rockefeller, he said the reason that he backed the women's lib movement is because, number one, he wanted to be able to tax the other half of the population, and number two, he wanted to get the children into the schools earlier and earlier and earlier by creating the women's lib movement.
Right.
And I mean, that's documented in America from Freedom to Fascism. You can agree with me or you cannot agree with me, but that's, according to them, the reason for that.
Oh, when you read social inequalities and access to child health care services and early childhood education, that they're not talking about helping people. They're talking about getting kids in schools and getting them into the pediatrician's office to get, vacations very, very, very early in age and getting it done under the auspices of helping people, when in reality it's about getting that child into the system at an earlier and earlier age.
Yeah.
And Hitler knew this.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, they're following the same blueprint. And our parents knew this. Mm-hmm. And because they lived through well, maybe not our parents, grandparents.
Grandparents knew
my
it,
grandfather
yeah.
fought in World War II for Britain. So, it was, it's interesting how they creep this in a little bit at a time. Now, back to the whole situation with the face coverings and the vacations. I think that we're at a point where we are seeing a turning point. People are saying, no, they're not going to take it anymore. And I think that we're in a winning position right now. The pressure's coming down a little bit in Canada and other places like that. But I think that all these politicians here in the United States, at the very least, they all saw their poll numbers are in the garbage. Mm-hmm. And so they lifted all the restrictions and they didn't do anything mandatory. Now, did we win the war? I wouldn't go so far as to say that, but we have won the battle up to this point. And like I said, I'm so proud of everybody. And I want to maintain that positivity. I want to continue to speak that into existence, that we have won, that we have won, that we have won. Mm-hmm. Because I don't want to feed the other side. That's why in 2020, moving into 2021, till the very last minute, I would not speak this reality into existence. This reality still came to be in existence, but I can sit back and I could look back and go, I didn't give any energy into creating the reality that we're in right now. So at the very least, I want to maintain that position of, hey, we're winning. Everything is going great. Let's continue doing what we're doing. But as somebody pointed out on Facebook, it was a very interesting meme. When a python is wrapped around its prey, sometimes it loosens its grip. And when it loosens its grip, it doesn't mean that it's letting go of its prey. It means that it's changing positions to come down on its prey even harder. Could that be what's going on right now? Very well could be. We don't know what the future is going to bring. But I know this, that we're all going to be okay. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever.
Yeah, I've no doubt in my mind about that either, because the people that are standing firm on their own convictions and not backing down, all they had to do is show a little bit of patience, and it happened on its own. All we had to do was be patient and withstand the pressure without backing down, without compromising our own convictions and what we know to be right. And it just fell away. After a certain period of time, it couldn't be sustained anymore. That's what I mean by the lies are unsustainable. They can only go for so long, and then once it's exposed, the magician can't trick the audience anymore, because you've already exposed the way they're doing it.
Very well said. Yeah. The thing is, as I said before, and forgive me for being redundant, but I think that we needed to dip down into this timeline. Because if we would have had Trump 2021, it would have been the same old, same old. But now everybody, one of the top rap songs out there, and I haven't been writing rap music, and I wish that I had been, because I think it would go a long way. But the kind of rap music that I was doing in 2008 and 2010 is now what's becoming popular. There's a song called Let's Go Brandon. It's got like 8 million views or something like that. And it's a very basic rap song, something I could have put together just like that. And I commend the artist for doing it. There's a lot of pro-Trump songs out there too, and a lot of Let's Go Brandon songs out there too. And I'm seeing more and more people turning to this side, because now they're seeing what it is that they were asking for. They're seeing that Black lives don't really matter. They only matter during election time. And then after election time, boom, everything is just forgotten. So that's all coming to the surface now. And people are they managed to fool people. But see, the thing is, we've been around for so long that they did this to us back in 2007. You remember, before Obama? Mm-hmm. We had the whole BLM thing happening back then. Right. And, all of this. So we know, because we're seasoned, that this is what they do.
Mm-hmm.
The younger kids these days, though, they didn't know. They needed to learn. So now they had that lesson. Now I think they're more on our side now, and they're realizing, oh, wait a second. We could have had a much better world, but we needed to go through this dip so we can get more people on our side. Yeah. And I think that's what's happening.
There were a lot of people that it wasn't bad enough yet. They needed to see how bad it could get.
A friend of mine. No. A friend of mine. It was great. A friend of mine who, through 2020, I've mentioned on the show before, but I've never mentioned him by name, just simply because I don't want to call anybody out. He's been a guest on the show, but he's on the complete opposite side of the spectrum when it comes to politics. Thank you very much, Anish. I kept getting messages in the mushroom realm just to go along with it. It could mean that everything that's happening now, we got to just go along with before things get good. I wholeheartedly agree with you, brother, and I'll elaborate on that here in just a second. But this guy, he was totally anti-Trump. He ran out. He got his vacation. He was scared of all the propaganda, all of that through 2020. And then I just finally started seeing him posting memes that are truth memes. Like, it's got Cypher in the Matrix, where he's looking at all the Matrix code, and it's got the little caption, and the actual clip says, I don't see the Matrix. I don't see the Matrix anymore. I just see blonde, brunette, this and that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't even see the code anymore. And the meme said, I don't see the mainstream media anymore. All I see is propaganda, false flag, this and that, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, wow, this is one of the most liberal guys I know, completely flipping and coming over to the side of truth, just simply because you can't deny it anymore, and the bullshit is so exposed that it's like pouring out of people's eyes, and people can like smell it on their faces now. It's like those face coverings just put all the bullshit like boom right on top of everybody's faces, and everybody's like, hey, wait a minute, this is bullshit. So that's the positive that came out of this. And going back to what Anish said earlier, I wholeheartedly agree with you, brother. And that's the same messages that I've been getting too. sit back, sharpen your sword. Everything is going exactly the way it's supposed to. It's a waiting game right now, and we're just waiting for certain astrological alignments. We're waiting for conjunctions. We're waiting for things to happen. We're waiting for the right time. The time is coming, and the time is now. So that's a great segue into our next little topic, which is astrology. So do you want to take a quick break before we get into the astrology?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay,
Yeah.
So what do you want to play during the break? Because we've got, our own music, obviously. It's been a while since we've played WTF Bra. It's, something. Oh, they have a Convoy remix. Now, I gotta warn you, WTF Bra, they're not really on one side or the other. So some of their videos are great. Some of their videos
Not
are
so
cringy
good.
because, it's got like Biden, talking about like, I'm Biden, I'm this, I'm that, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, you're just a senile old man with dementia, and I feel really bad for you. But you've led a really horrible life, so you deserve what you get. But at the same time,
it's sad to watch.
It's very sad to watch. Very sad to watch. So let me play you this real quick just so we can split it up, and we will be right back with the astrology coming up.
Everyone's tired of COVID. This pandemic has sucked. These protests are not the way to get through it. This pandemic has sucked. They're not the story of this pandemic. This pandemic has sucked for all Canadians. This pandemic has sucked.
In Canada, things are happening that are worth covering, which is a rarity. The convoy protests against COVID have grabbed global attention and paralyzed Canada's capital city. The Canadian left is calling all of these people Trumpians. They find a few fringe members and then they say, these people represent the entire protest, as opposed to the core ideology.
What is the main goal of the Trumpers here?
Freedom. It has to stop.
Where freedom from gets no
It has to stop. Everyone's tired of COVID. This pandemic has sucked. These protests are not the way to get through it. This pandemic has sucked. They're not the story of this pandemic. This pandemic has sucked for all Canadians. This pandemic has sucked.
I can't go skiing, I can't go to Walmart, I can't go to Canadian Tire.
I'm not leaving until all the mandates are gone.
There's a lot of people here streaming live online.
Kicked off Facebook, blocked. They shouldn't have turned my Facebook off. Now I'm angry.
If you want to compare Canada to anything, it's like Hitler's Germany, and we're like the Jews, eh?
Everyone's tired of COVID. This pandemic has sucked. These protests are not the way to get through it. This pandemic has sucked. They're not the story of this pandemic. This pandemic has sucked for all Canadians. This pandemic has sucked.
Do what I say. Take a vaccine passport. Let me track everywhere you go. No! Just because you're wearing a blue shirt, you're a woman, that's right. Okay. Doesn't mean you're allowed to think us your slaves. That's North Korea, you chicken neck monster! They're criminals. They're attacking us. Wake the hell up, people. Separately, I need funding, plus you need to get prepared. And we're ready to ship you high quality squirrel food right now. And if you don't get squirrel food, the world's going, you're nuts.
Everyone's tired of COVID. This pandemic has sucked. These protests are not the way to get through it. This pandemic has sucked. They're not the story of this pandemic. This pandemic has sucked for all Canadians. This pandemic has sucked.
Now listen, if you have not,
I am so proud
to YouTube channel
of my Canadian brothers and sisters out there. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that the most peaceful people out there, the most peaceful, sweetest, most hospitable people in the world would be the ones who would lead this change that we so desperately need? I mean, things are bad when you have pissed off the sweetest, most awesome people in the world. I don't know. I've never been to Canada, but I've seen people actually poking fun at how awesome people in Canada are. So, it's, as far as like hospitality and everything like that, like they treat complete strangers like their family and stuff like that. So I wish that kind of hospitality and brotherhood and sisterhood, spread throughout the rest of the world too. I would love to see that. And, they're the ones that are leading this. So, it's pretty amazing to watch. Mrs. Gio will be joining us here again in just a few moments. No, take your time, sweetie. It's been rough. She dislocates a lot of toes, and with the internal stuff that's going on, it's been hard to move around, and because it's been hard to move around, the muscles are not as strong, and so I'm trying to get her to do, daily exercises where she's like, getting on her tippy toes a little bit, and wall pull-ups or push-ups, stuff like that. But at the same time, we got to be really careful to not further damage anything that's internal until it gets fixed. And I'm gonna call the doctor tomorrow and say, look, we can't. He wants to do all these tests, and they're all for the safety. But we just got to speed up this process. We can't keep this going.
Yeah.
The way that it's been.
It's
but you are freaking awesome for getting on here and doing a show.
Aww, thank you.
And it's been affecting both of our sleep schedules. I'm up all night and trying to take care of her and trying to take care of all kinds of stuff like that. I try to stay up during the days to take care of Via Life and TFR and everything else. And I feel really bad because I feel like I've left our Patreons just kind of hanging for a couple weeks.
Oh, I feel even worse.
I just want to say thank you for sticking with us, guys and gals. I don't think we've lost a single Patreon, which is great.
I know. I'm incredibly humbled and I feel so blessed by our people. When I see that we haven't even lost anybody, that makes my heart sore, because I know that our tribe is our tribe. They're here for the right reasons, and they really are our tribe, and they're not just fans of a show. We're all part of a family, and we're all here for each other.
I mean, in my humble opinion, when we're gone, it's going to make our story that much more epic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we can... I wanted to do a show about EDS, and just simply because I think it would help a lot of people out there in a situation where you have a significant other that's going through something, to kind of share our experiences about how we've handled it, how we handle the ups and the downs, how we still continue to just press on, do what we do, regardless of all of that. And I mean, when we started talking about it, I didn't want to talk about it, first of all, because I didn't want to talk about us, and I didn't want to talk about like, oh, we've got this going on and that going on. But once we started talking about it, I was amazed, because there were others who were saying, hey, I've got EDS too. I've got this, I've got that going on. And there's a lot of people out there in our tribe who are also going through a lot of this stuff. So once they realized, they were like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing what you're doing. That's inspiring me to do more with my life too.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's brilliant.
It's incredible. It really is, because this is it's a really challenging illness to be born with. It really is. But at the same time, those challenges don't have to be bad. You can take a lot of magical energy from the experiences, and it's that energy is what you pay for with that suffering. I hate to put it that way. It's a good thing. It's almost like there's an astrological being, an object called Chiron, and it's the wounded healer. And Chiron is a good object, and you would think, oh, it's wounded. That wounded is bad. Wounded means you're hurt. It's bad. But that's an ego response. And what is the ego? The ego is meant to keep us surviving. And in the ego's opinion, all suffering and all wounding is bad, right? Because it's bad to be hurt, because existentially that could lead to death eventually. And so we're trained, even on a very subconscious level, even, to value not suffering and not being wounded. And so when we hear about Chiron the wounded healer, it's a disconnect. We have a really bad disconnect right off the bat, because it doesn't make sense. So we have to think about it. Who can heal another person from a wound that you can't see? The only person that can heal a wound that you can't see is somebody that's felt that wound before themselves. And so the wounded healer, the more you experience in this life, and the more experiences you can, put on your experience belt, for lack of a better term, it's like a quest. It's like a quest list in a video game where, I've unlocked, kidney stones, or I've unlocked this, or I've unlocked that. Once you have these experiences, when someone says, hey, I've got a kidney stone, you know exactly how, not only how they feel, but also what you did for yourself in order to make yourself feel better. And so the wounded healer has a very, very important and very graceful set of tools from which he can draw upon, and that is experience. And experience is the most valuable tool that there is when it comes to treating things that you can't see. So, your astrological object of the day is Chiron. Look it up. I
can tell you. I can tell you from experience. Until I experienced panic attacks myself, you can go back and you can hear old archives from like 2015, 2016. People would call in and they would talk about having panic attacks and, things like that. And I never said it out loud, but you can kind of see it in my demeanor. I would just kind of be like, stop worrying about everything, I didn't realize that panic attacks actually felt like heart attacks. Like they felt like you were having a stroke. Like they were a physiological thing that happens. Mm-hmm. Once I started experiencing them myself, then I was like, oh, now I understand. Now I can better connect with people who are experiencing that, because I understand what they're going through, instead of just dismissing it as, well, stop worrying about anything. And this is coming from a guy who has jumped out of airplanes, who have jumped off of buildings with, tied to a rubber band.
No problem.
Who went and traversed Egypt, drank ayahuasca in the pyramids, by himself with his wife, who was recovering from a shoulder surgery at the time and, could barely walk.
Could barely stand up.
And we still went out and did it. I was like 300 pounds at the time, too. And I was just like, it just goes to show that when you tap into your higher self, that's it. The avatar doesn't matter anymore. But back to what I was saying earlier about the panic attack situation. Now I understand. When you guys and gals say, hey, I'm having panic attacks, I understand. It's a physical thing. You feel like you're dying. You feel like you're having a heart attack. But once you realize that, though, and you realize, no, I'm not having a heart attack, I'm actually having a panic attack. Because I'm like, dude, I don't panic. I remember the doctor telling me this. And I'm like, I don't panic. And he's like, no, you don't understand. This is a physiological thing. It's chemicals in your brain, okay? Mm-hmm. The chemicals in your brain are not acting right because of this pituitary tumor that you have, and so it's causing the anxiety to happen. And I was like, oh, okay, now that makes sense, because I can get all my little thought loops out of my head. I can stare down whatever. I could be on the top of the tower as soon as I can. As soon as the doctor clears me after this car accident, I'm gonna go jump off the Strat, and I'm gonna do it.
I know you are.
I'm gonna go do it on live stream. Seriously, they do bungee jumping off the Strat. It's gonna be freaking epic. Like I've been waiting to do that ever since we got here to Vegas. So I'm definitely jumping off the Strat. But anyways, I can sit there and I can look at it with and I can harness, I can overcome all that fear from looking down and, all of that, and just trust my higher self, trust the equipment that I'm working with, trust that it's my time and not my time to go and have that experience. And, they take a lot of safety precautions. I mean, number one, you've got the bungee cord. It's not going to break. Even if it does break, they have a net under there. So even if the bungee cord breaks, you fall into the net, and that's it. So there's it's totally safe. If the net breaks, you're screwed. But you've got to have two things go wrong in order for something bad to happen. But, I realized this, and I realized that I could rebalance myself, and both of us, forgive me for talking too much about your personal stuff, but you have a hiatal hernia. You ladies out there know what that is. Mm-hmm. It makes it very difficult to eat. It makes it very difficult to, do a lot of things. Yeah. And that was the result of all these doctors saying, here's some NSAIDs, here's NSAIDs, here's NSAIDs, here's NSAIDs.
You have inflammation, you need anti-inflammatories.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And they wanted to put me on all kinds of stuff, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'll take the testosterone, I'll take, the estrogen blockers, I'll take a couple things, but I'm not going to take the freaking Zoloft.
Yeah.
They tried to give me Zoloft. I'm like, hell no, I'm not taking Zoloft. Are you freaking nuts? Like, I couldn't believe, I couldn't believe it. Luckily the doctor that found the pituitary tumor, he's an old Native American guy. So he's more like a shaman than anything else. But that's why we developed iLife, ayalife.com. And we developed this way back in 2016, put it out there in 2018. And we've been getting amazing. I mean, we just got something in the chat earlier. Somebody was saying, yeah, iLife is freaking great. We've been getting so much awesome feedback from people dealing with inflammation, dealing with panic attacks, dealing with just the isolation of what's going on right now. And we actually found papers that people weren't dying of the zombie virus, but they were dying of what's called cytokine storms, when the immune system attacks itself. And so the immune system attacks itself, kills the immune system, and people die. And we found papers from the National Institute of Health showing that CBD prevents cytokine storms. Now, obviously, we can't say that this will prevent, anything from happening, but we can say this. Not a single person that's been using iLife through this last 2 years has had any problem whatsoever. And if they did get anything, like we did in March of 2020, it was a light flu, and we got over it, built antibodies to it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you have something you can use that's not NSAIDs. Your doctor loves it. Your former pain doctor, when we were up in Washington, she was giving it to her husband, and then she was giving it to her patients as well, giving her the flyers. I went to the dentist, and the dentist assistant had, I think it's COPD. No, it was something. I don't remember what it was, but she said that there was no treatment for it. And she thought she would just have to live with it. And I gave her a couple bottles of this. I didn't even think that it would work for it. And I come back and I'm like, oh my God, you look great. And, she was a little bigger, but, she looked like she lost weight. You tell me, Shuri, what's the proper way to compliment a woman and say, hey, you've lost weight?
You look like you're in great shape.
Okay, good. That's what I said. But I wanted to say, you look like you lost weight, because she did.
You don't want to say that, though.
No, okay, no, I didn't. I just said, you look like you've been working out. And she goes, no, I've been using your product.
Oh, that's great.
I was like, really? And she said she gave it to her mom, she gave it to her sister, she gave it to several people. And this is, it was so cool, because I could meet the person face to face and actually see the difference. It's one thing to get emails. It's another thing to actually see people in real life who've been using it. And she's like, oh yeah, no, she said she sleeps so much better now. She's not feeling, I want to say it was COPD, but I don't think it was. I think it was something else. But she said that her symptoms were alleviated by using this.
Well, I fully believe that I would probably be on dialysis or something like that at this point if it were not for iLife. And the reason why I say that is because I had childhood VUR, which is where the urine goes backwards up into the kidneys. And so I've got a significant amount of scarring in my ureters and kidneys from that. So just that alone has a lot of scarring. And so I shouldn't have been taking NSAIDs to begin with. That was stupid for them to ever give me those. But the fact that I take iLife every single day, and I don't ever miss a day, is, I mean, they've attributed that to the reason why I don't really have any problems with my kidneys that are like serious issues that have to be addressed with medication or with even lifestyle changes or dietary changes or anything like that. And my inflammation levels are actually really low. And so I have a joint out of place that's been out of place for the last half hour or so. But as far as it doesn't really even hurt unless I try to move it. But the inflammation is not even very bad because I keep my body at a point where it doesn't make inflammation because ILife keeps it at a low level at all times.
Yeah.
And that's just amazing. It's wonderful.
So we've been doing this buy one, get one free. Go to the store and go to the single bottle, put 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 in your cart, however many you want. We'll put you in the cart here, and then enter coupon code BTV Tribe, all lowercase. And our Patreon is patreon.com/BTV Tribe too. I had it on the screen earlier, but I had to reinstall Windows, and I'm using an old version of our overlays that I don't have BTV Tribe. But the coupon code is BTV Tribe, all lowercase, TRIBE. I've actually got 4 in my cart here. So enter promo code here and BTV Tribe. So a little plug for ILife there. It's amazing. I mean, it's just like the comments that we've been getting have been incredible. So if we can veer off for a second, I want to get into the astrology here in just a second, but I think this is a good time to just talk a little bit, and I'd like to do a show dedicated to it, but I want to talk a little bit about EDS, about dealing with stuff like this. So EDS is a connective tissue disorder, and this is where the connective tissue, there's 4 different types of EDS. What are the 4 different
Actually,
types?
there are about 15 different subtypes, but the 4 most common types are type 1, which is the type I have, and that's classical EDS, and that's where you find the types of collagen that are involved with your joints, your skin, and your internal organs. And that's found pretty much everywhere in your body. So you have issues are related mostly to joint dysfunction and internal organ problems, kidneys, digestive system, reproductive system. All these systems have issues, along with the skin and joints. Type 3 EDS. Because type 2 EDS is actually type 1. It's a subtype of type 1 that's not really even, it's benign. It's more of a benign form. And my sister has more of that.
So would these be
type.
the contortionists?
Yeah, these would be the contortionists, the people that are able to move their joints out of place but not pay for it with pain or any kind of problems.
Ocean's 11?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the little Oriental guy.
Yeah, the little Oriental
who
guy.
Could get into the box because he was a contortionist.
Yeah,
that's
those are
EDS.
people with benign forms of joint hypermobility. And that can even be seen as a positive thing. In the show Altered Carbon, they were gene splicing their soldiers to include hypermobility genes so that they could more easily access weaponry and aim at different angles and be able to do flips and things like that to be more mobile when they're performing missions. So it can actually be a good thing to be hypermobile. However, when you have a disease process, the collagen is like, it's like the body is built like a house with glue that instead of being good glue that you find at Home Depot, it's glue from an elementary school, and not even like the white glue, but like those glue sticks that don't work. That's what my joints feel like. And so every day my muscles have to do all the job that my joints are supposed to do. And my joints are supposed to keep themselves together with using collagen, but the collagen is faulty, so my muscles have to do all the work, and thus I get dislocations and as well as a lot of muscle spasm.
And there's a gene therapy for this.
Oh yeah, of course there is.
They can go in there and use the mRNA technology in a positive way and CRISPR to fix this.
Yeah.
But they're choosing to do the opposite.
Well, yeah, because
for their purpose is to reduce the amount of people.
Right.
And it's sad. However, I do have to say that once we were in the pyramid and all those ancient sites, your condition actually came in beneficial because you were able to get into those tunnels way easier than I could.
And type 3 EDS is hypermobility EDS, and that's actually the most benign physically, but the most painful. Because you get the most dislocations, and these are people that, they get even more dislocations than I do. And these are people that they usually are in a wheelchair by the time they're my age, because they just have so many problems with their hips, especially, and their legs, that they can't walk anymore. And then type 4 EDS is the most dangerous form, and it's what they thought I had for a long time, because I have like the facial characteristics, and they said that a lot of type 1 can look like type 4 until they rule it out. And it can even have a lot of vascular issues. Even with type 1, you can have some vascular issues, but type 4 EDS has an average life expectancy of 48. And the reason why that is because the vascular system, when the collagen of the vascular system doesn't work right, then you have real problems with the heart, the blood vessels, the aorta especially, and they'll just rip apart. These blood vessels are so fragile that all it takes is just an aneurysm or something like that, and they die very early in life, and it's very sad.
I mean, think about this. What we've done here with iLife is we've taken the best part of the cannabis plant and the best part of the ayahuasca brew and combined it together. You've got an anti-parasitic and you've got a healing component.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them work in a synergy and alleviate a lot of these issues. It's phenomenal. I just wanted to point that out real quick. But you know, it's a challenge because on one hand, you know, you're 30 something. I'm not going to say how old.
Somewhere in my 30s.
Yeah, and you know, we are young and vibrant and ready to go out and experience life and, you know, do all that. But sometimes there's stuff that's just kind of thrown into the sphere,
mm-hmm.
which is good and bad. I mean, obviously it's bad because of the physical things that are going on, but it's also good because it gives us an opportunity to tap into our higher selves and operate from the raw consciousness part, mm-hmm. and disconnect further from the avatar. And then we can help others out there to disconnect from their avatar and realize that, you know, it just further underlines and reinforces the fact that we're not this avatar. We're just borrowing this avatar.
Mm-hmm.
And this avatar could be giving us problems just like your car is giving you problems, but at the end of the day, the driver's okay.
Right.
And so it's given us an opportunity to it's forced us. I mean, it hasn't even given us an opportunity. It's forced us to tap further into that raw consciousness,
mm-hmm.
so we can better show people how to tap into the raw consciousness. So I know there's a lot of people out there and they're dealing with certain things themselves, mm-hmm. or they could have a significant other that's dealing with something, and it's very difficult. I mean, I can tell you from my vantage point, there's nothing more frustrating than watching your significant other in pain or needing some kind of surgery like you're waiting
mm-hmm.
for, and sit back and not be able to do anything about it.
Yeah, you can't help
them. You can't do anything but just offer support, love, and all of this.
Yep.
But I'll tell you this, at about 10 p.m. today, I lay down in the bed with you, and we just laid,
Aww.
and I felt rejuvenated afterwards.
Aww.
I don't know how you felt, but I think you felt pretty rejuvenated too, because I woke you up at about 1 o'clock, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to go do a show. Do you want to come with me? And you're like, yeah, I do. And so here you are, and mm-hmm. you're looking way better than you have all day long.
Aww.
So I think that's a combination of a couple different things. Number one, the iLife. Number two, the twin flame connection. Number three, the connection with the tribe.
With the tribe,
here. And I hope that others out there who tune in and hang out, especially during the live shows, are also feeling a healing, mm-hmm. rejuvenation as well. And whatever you're dealing with out there, because it's okay. It's okay. We're all dealing with stuff. I mean,
mm-hmm.
we're dealing with isolation. We're dealing with separation. We're dealing with all of the psychological damage that has happened to us because of 2020 and everything that's been going on. If you're not experiencing some kind of psychological issues and physical issues and all this, there's something wrong with you because mm-hmm. the human body and mind is not meant to be isolated, and bases aren't meant to be covered. That fucks with everybody. And I think what I really want to get out to people is that it's okay. It's okay, whatever you're experiencing. And those of you who have overcome it are just freaking awesome, and you can help others overcome it too. So we all come together, and I think that's the only reason why we've come this far during this whole situation. And we've watched others fall and, pour out a little bit of liquor for the fallen out there. But, we came together as a tribe, and here we are. We're all here right now. It's so freaking awesome.
Well, you know what? I just found an article. It's relatively new, and it's saying that CBD improves the production of collagen. So the reason why collagen supplements don't work for EDS is because you can tell the body to make more collagen all day long, but if the body's making collagen in an incorrect way, then it doesn't matter how much collagen it's making. It's still going to be faulty collagen. It's still going to fall apart just at the exact same rate. However, CBD improves the production of collagen, so it makes the muscles firmer, makes the skin firmer, and it makes the connective tissue and bone stronger as a result. So over time, immediately it'll help with pain, but over time, that's how it helps with inflammation, is it improves the production of collagen so that the collagen you are making is better than the collagen you were making before you started taking iLife.
That's very true. That's very true. And as the matrix shuts down, our bodies are part of the matrix, and so we're going to feel them shutting down too. And if you're feeling your body shutting down out there, it's just part of the process. We can make it easier as it happens, but as people are saying in the chat, they're ready to go home. I'm ready to go home too. You're ready to go home. People are talking about cannabis in the chat, and we do a little bit of cannabis. I don't do that much because it makes me eat. And I already, I've been fluctuating enough here in this area that, and you need to eat more.
I use quite a bit of cannabis on a day-to-day basis because it does help with inflammation. It does help with pain, and it's a lot better than the alternatives that are commonly available. And I like to keep a balance of both. You've got the plant medicine, which is the primary, and then the backup is the what quote unquote traditional medicine, but Western medicine does need to play a role because I live in the Western world. I'm surrounded by the environment and need to tune the way that I treat all of this to where I'm at. When in Rome, you kind of have to judge for yourself. You have to judge for yourself what's right for you. And for everyone, that's a different thing. And I'm not here to tell you what's right for you, only what's worked for me. So
I love that. And I wish more and more people would be like that. And I hope that we've been able to lead by example, that we can't tell you what's good for you because only you know what's good for you. And what's good for us may not be good for you. What's good for you may not be good for us. But what they've tried to do is they've tried to create this one-size-fits-all diet, veganism. At the same time, that was preparing consciousness for a one-size-fits-all solution to the zombie virus.
And a great harvest.
And the great harvest. Mm-hmm. And even the New Agers out there were pushing the vacation.
And the great harvest.
That was right there to me, like just blaring at me like, hey, this is a program. It's a program. It's a program. Like I already knew it, but that just was like total 100% confirmation when I saw the New Agers saying you can't ascend unless you alter your DNA like this, and you're going to get this DNA upgrade.
You have to take on a new operating system.
A miracle of science that's going to install a new operating system into you. And I'm like... No.
Yuck.
No. For me personally, it's balance. A little bit of balance, I think I could eat a little more vegetables, but I need balance in my life. I need balance of Western and Eastern medicine. I need balance of junk food and good food. I need balance of spirituality time and party time. I need balance of rest and hard work. I remember in 2015 to 2018, 2019, I was working for a company doing IT, and doing BTV and doing iLife and doing all this, and I was sleeping like 4 hours a night, and that's it. And I prided myself on doing that. And then I realized, wait a second, I'm way out of balance. I'm not taking time to sit down and enjoy anything at all, period. And it's funny because I thought I had broken myself out of that loop. Because when I was doing the carpet cleaning, I remember I would go out and I would work, sometimes 36 hours at a time if there was a hurricane or something like that, and doing flood restoration. But I would work 7 days a week. Anytime a customer called and needed something, I was always there. And I realized that I was making all this money, but I didn't have time to enjoy it. So what was the point of me even going out and doing it to begin with? If I'm not going to enjoy it, and I found myself to be completely and totally out of balance. But at the time, I prided myself on doing that. Just like I prided myself on working, all that and just being nonstop. What I found is that when I found my balance, my work became much more efficient. I didn't have to work as hard because I was working more efficiently instead of I was working smarter, not harder.
Right.
And, I think we just have to consider that. And so I'd love to know what works for you guys and gals out there, because there's a lot that needs to be rebalanced right now. People have talked about colloidal silver. I tried that. It didn't have much of an effect for me. On the last show, people were ridiculing me a little bit because I did one of the testosterone injections and I used an eyeglass cleaning pad on accident. They were both sitting there, and I was in a hurry, and I grabbed the eyeglass cleaning pad. I cleaned the area, and I jabbed myself with the testosterone, and then I got an infection, and they gave me antibiotics with sulfa.
Yeah.
And oh my God, that stuff is bad.
Yeah, he was allergic.
Yeah.
We didn't know he was allergic.
But somebody was like, oh my God, he's taking poisonous antibiotics. And I'm like, look, I'd rather keep my leg and take a little bit of poisonous antibiotics than lose my leg.
He's taking probiotics
too. So, that's a choice that I've made. I'm not going to judge you if you make the other choice, but my choice is to keep my leg. My leg is a little more important.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of balance that I'm talking about. So again, I guess the message that I relay time and time again is don't let peer pressure out there cause you to deny yourself things that your body needs, whether it's pleasure or Western medicine or Eastern medicine or any of that. It's just like, don't let peer pressure make you indulge too much in something that you shouldn't be indulging in. We're all taught that as we grow up, just say no, just say no, just say no. Don't fall into peer pressure. But then all of a sudden, when 2020 comes in, it's like, hey, everybody just say yes. And if you say no or question anything, then you're the bad guy. And it's like, wait a second, you told us all our lives to just say no, and now you're telling us to just say yes and trust the science. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. But my point is it's okay to be you, and it's okay to be human, because we're all in human avatars, and it's okay to have your challenges and all of that. It's not what's going on with you that is the problem. What makes it positive or negative is how you handle it and how it affects the consciousness. And you can take anything and you can transmute it, and you can transmute it into something positive. And I think if anything about our journey, what it's taught us is that we've taken all the negative stuff that has happened to us and we've transmuted it into something positive. Even all this stuff that's going on right now with you, yes, it's horrible to go through. It's a million times more horrible for you than it is for me, but it's horrible for me to go through. But at the same time, I'm number one. I'm enjoying every moment that I have with you, even that much more. I'm number two, trying to focus a little more on spirituality. Number three, I'm getting more rest. Also, I'm having a little more downtime to be able to connect with you. And I'm savoring the moments way more than I did before. Before, moments were taken for granted. Now they're savored and they're enjoyed, and we've transmuted this. And if it's time for one of us to go home, then the other one's going to take the codes back with them. So we're even looking at it like that. That is the toughest place to be. I thought I was going to be the one to go. But, we don't know what the future's going to bring. But this is what I told them on the other side. I said, look, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere without my tribe. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So number one, we need to help others get out. And number two, I'm not leaving without her. So you better figure out a way to unplug us both at the same time. And as I was talking about in the beginning of the show, we're having these synchronistic experiences that I think they're kind of like testing stuff on the other side, and synchronistically, because I think they got the message. And they're like, all right, we need him out here. He's not going to come out without her. And so we better
have
do
to
something.
make some plans.
Yeah. But it's not that we want to bail out. You know, my vision is this. Beautiful life at the peak of our career, doing something epic, and then boom, explosion, you know, something like that. That's the way I want to go out. You know, that's the way I would want to go. In the happiest, best state that we can possibly be.
Mm-hmm.
That may not happen, but, you know, going home is necessary. It is. It's not wanting to leave here, though. That's not the thing. It's not like I want to leave here because things suck.
Has nothing to do with
It's just like the job's almost done, and I know that I got to go home, but there is one more site to go to before. There may be more, and if there's more, then that gives us even more reason to stay. But I don't want anybody to feel sad about going home. I want people to be excited about going home. Now, I'm not saying that people should go out and drink Kool-Aid and go home right now.
No.
I'm just saying, it's okay. Whatever you're going through right now, it's okay. It's Cherie has a theory, and I was theorizing on this earlier too. December 21st, 2020, we shifted into another parallel or tangent universe. What if this universe is the deintegration process?
We're already dead.
What
Essentially.
If we're already, and this is part of the wake-up process? I mean, I don't know. You know, you would imagine when a consciousness has been inside of a machine, inside of a simulation for quite some time, you can't just jerk that consciousness out.
Yeah, it has to deintegrate.
It has to deintegrate.
Yeah.
And we're deintegrating in this
It would explain a lot. And it would explain like why we seem to feel the same way. It's like we synchronize our energy patterns together sometimes, and we both feel really weird at the exact same time. And then earlier today, the choking thing really was weird because it happened at literally the exact same time. We both start choking, except he was choking on something liquid and I was choking on something solid. And that was the only difference. And it was like the exact same time. And so I remembered, as, you know, somebody that studied medicine for a while, that when you're doing a test to see if somebody is in a coma, one of those tests is the gag reflex. And if they have a gag reflex, then you add a point, because that means that, you know, they're more conscious than they are asleep. And I think it could be the case where we're being woken up at the exact same time, like we requested.
Waking Gaia got a confirmation of Cancer today. Oh. All of our love and positive energy for you, Waking Gaia. However, I hope that you can take the energy from BTV. Mm-hmm. You can take the energy from the whole tribe, and you can do whatever you want with that energy. You can transmute it into something positive. You can probably eliminate it with mind over matter kind of I'm sorry, all my screens just died literally all of a sudden. Did your screen die?
Yeah, that screen just died. I don't know what just happened.
No, I don't know what happened either. It's done this before, and I have a feeling like we're still on air.
We are still on air.
Yeah.
Because my computer still works, so.
I don't know how to get these screens turned back on.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Did they short out?
I don't know what happened.
I don't either. No idea. Oh, uh-oh. I can see here. You're talking in the chat room.
Am I?
Oops.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely don't want to do a reboot because we're going to drop the stream if we do. But I've been having problems with this computer for a while. It's so funny, right? We're on the topic.
Oh, Waking Gaia. She said, I've spoken a bit with Shuri about how much the iLife is helping with my nausea. Oh, I'm so glad it was, and is, because, I know that can be rough. I know that for myself, because of the hernia, I get a lot of nausea, and, hernias are just one of those things with EDS. You get hernias very, very easily, and, I had an intussusception in 2012, and that was how they actually found out that I didn't have type 4, the vascular type of EDS, because my insides weren't fragile. Whenever they opened me up, my joints are fragile to the extent that, you can't move them too far or they'll pop out of place. But, and my shoulder just did. It's not the case where my blood vessels are like tissue paper where they just like fall apart, because that's type 4 EDS, is where those blood vessels are just so fragile. But I had an intussusception and had to have surgery for that. But because of the hiatal hernia that I'm currently dealing with, I have a lot of nausea too. And a lot of the medications for nausea are just they have a lot of bad side effects, really, really rough. So iLife is fantastic for nausea in my experience. It's been good for my nausea. So, could you guys ship to Ireland? We do ship overseas, to Ireland. So, time is a phenomenon.
I don't think that I can get these monitors to turn back on
Oh
without
man, are we going to have
reboot.
to? Yeah, I think we're going to have to reboot them.
I guess we can just proceed like this. I don't have a screen. I don't have anything
We
in
have
front
no
of me.
screen.
No,
you can't chat in the chat room or anything.
Well, I mean, I've got my little tablet here. So,
oh yeah, that's right.
So yeah, I hope
just
that's
talk in
not the
front
end.
of
I hope that's not the end of my computer, because
I hope not too.
if it is, I've been having this problem for a couple of years, and man,
I think you're gonna have to
I'm
get
not
a new.
really in a position to buy a new computer right now. But
No, we're really not. But
if I reboot it, I don't think that I'm going to be able to hit the stream as quickly. I have an idea though. Here, can you keep it going?
yes, I can.
Okay.
So I want to talk a little bit about the Pluto return. So let me pull up some notes that I wrote earlier about this, because this is really interesting. Today, the U.S. is having a brand new astrological event, Pluto's return, which only happens once every 248 years. That's right. It was 248, not 284. Although it might take quite a bit of time for this planet to achieve one orbit, it'll pack a punch once it's complete. For many countries, the Pluto return signifies a period of upheaval, radical reassessment, and change. It has marked the end of empires, but also forms of government and structure. There is no going back to how it once was. Pluto destroys what no longer serves us and creates a new path forward. So, Pluto symbolizes upheaval. It symbolizes change. And this year, the U.S. is having its Pluto return, an event that many suspect will signal a major shift for the country. I completely wholeheartedly agree. This is something I've been looking forward to for a couple of years myself, because I predicted that in early 2022 we'd start to see shifts back to a period of back to a place of sanity, as far as political events and things like that. And that's exactly what we're seeing. When the Founding Fathers signed the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776, American colonies declared their sovereignty from Great Britain, grandly stating that, quote, all men are created equal. In reality, the sentiment only applied to upper-class people, and really upper-class men of European descent. For years, the U.S. has been forced to reckon with what July 4th really means and the ways in which the country continues to overtly and covertly oppress so many of its citizens. So, all of the things, what essentially I think the Pluto return is it's going to take out the garbage of everything that we had still from 1776 to 2022. Everything we have in our political structure, in our government, all these things that we had from that time period, but that we don't need anymore. We don't need this false sense of victimhood anymore. We don't need to carry around a whole lot of guilt about what our ancestors did or what your ancestors did, or have a chip on my shoulder about what your ancestors did to my ancestors. All of that is unnecessary. All of that is meant to divide. It's meant to conquer us and keep us conquered. And that's why the French Revolution didn't really result in anything different for the French people. When all was said and done, they just went from monarchy to anarchy back to monarchy. With Napoleon, all they were getting was more of the same. It was back to the exact same thing that they fought against in the first place. And so the French Revolution's a totally different thing in and of itself, but it's not just the American Revolution that we're looking at whenever we're looking at the Pluto return. We're looking at the French Revolution too. The French Revolution was far worse than the American Revolution in terms of the bloodthirstiness, the way that it was carried out against innocents, compared to, i.e., women and children, compared to the American Revolution. There was honor involved in the American Revolution. There was a lot of honor. It was for a specific reason. And once it was over, it was over. The French Revolution was never meant to end. It was meant to be a war that was meant to be unsustainable and meant to bankrupt France in order for the wealth to be consolidated later by the Rothschilds and people like that. So the French Revolution is and the Pluto return, it's kind of the negative side of the coin when it comes to the Pluto return, whereas the American Revolution was more the positive side. Are you back with us?
I can be if you want me to.
Do you have anything you want to?
Well, what I'm trying to do right now is
are you working?
Set up
Okay.
OBS on my laptop.
Cool.
Get it streaming out, and then I can reboot my computer, and we can pick it up from there.
Okay, cool. You know what? I can keep it going for a few more minutes with this, because this is really interesting. Planetary returns occur when a planet in the zodiac returns to the place, the degree, and sign it was during a physical or spiritual birth. These events are thought to mark a new chapter and story in our lives, one that will set the stage for the future and is karmic in nature. Some planets return to a significant degree and sign faster than others, like the Sun, who comes back to the same position in our birth charts every single year. Mars returns to the point and sign it was when we were born approximately every 2 years. Jupiter returns every 13 years. That's interesting. Saturn returns take place every 27 to 30 years. And Uranus returns every 84 years. As you may have intuited, planets that are further away from the Earth take a longer time orbiting to these birth degrees and signs, and far off Pluto takes roughly 225 years or more to return to the position it was during a notable event. That means individuals never get to experience their personal Pluto return, and which is unfortunate, unless you're, able to live longer than 225 years. But what's getting people in the U.S. interested this year is that Pluto will reach 27 degrees Capricorn on February 22nd, 2022. And that is the exact degree and sign it was in during the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, which many people consider the birth of the modern-day United States. Astrologers are considering that the U.S.'s personal Pluto return, and because Pluto is known for shaking up current dynamics and pushing them to crumble, all to allow them to be put back together in a more restorative way that aligns with the status quo, they are predicting that the country may undergo some major changes, hopefully for the better. The reason why people are saying hopefully is because, as we saw with the French Revolution, that doesn't always happen. And the reason why we have a little bit of doubt is because the status quo, who gets to decide what the status quo is? Do we decide what the status quo is, or does the government decide what the status quo is, or does media decide what the status quo is? Because it seems like that's a question that hasn't been answered throughout this whole process of 2020 and 2021. Who gets to decide what the status quo is and what is important to the country and what kind of dynasty we want? And if we even want a dynasty, do we want a world where we go back to a monarchist kind of system, except instead of kings, it's just, bureaucrats who we don't even elect anymore? Or is it small government and free market capitalism that is not crony capitalism? I would like to go with the latter, whereas the media would not like to go with the latter. So who's right? And that's the question. Who's right in this? I guess the answer to who's right is whose plan results in the least amount of people getting hurt or having their property taken from them without just cause, or having their rights trampled. I think the latter does. But as we saw with 2020 and 2021, fear is an addiction, and it can be a very powerful addiction. And as long as the public is addicted to fear, the media will be able to manipulate it. And that is
true.
A sad reality.
So what I'm going to try to do, ladies and gentlemen, because I have to reboot my computer, and my computer takes forever to reboot. I'm going to try to flip streams real quick, play a backup video, and from there, hopefully I won't drop the YouTube stream. What do you think? Can we do this?
Let's do it.
And on that note, I'm going to change Mrs. Gio's reality. Because I can tell Mrs. Gio is fading a little bit.
I'm hungry for kolaches.
Kolaches.
I want kolaches.
All right. We'll go get kolaches. Kiss the one you love right now. You never know the last time it's going to be. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. And thank you to all our Patreons. If you're watching this on a live stream, it's about 4 hours, because we had to play a little bit of breaks while we did some reformatting here.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the super chats as well. And if you want to catch the full show, head on over to patreon.com/BTVTribe. If not, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe here on the YouTube channel. Hit the bell notification channel. Hit the bell notification so you can get live notices for whenever we go live. Sometimes we go live at 11 a.m. Sometimes we go live at 2 a.m. So you never know. But thank you very much. It's been revitalizing for us. We hope that it's been revitalizing and inspirational for you. And above all, we hope that you take the knowledge from this broadcast, apply it to your life, live the best possible life that you can without fear. It's good to have a healthy fear. I mean, if you're walking by a cliff, yeah, you need to have a little bit of fear that you're going to fall over, okay? That way you're a little more careful. But at the end of the day, there's no fear. There's nothing to fear. It's all one big continuation. And right now, especially in the middle of this pandemic, when we're watching our loved ones go, just know they're going in peace. We're going to go in peace too, whether it's 6 months, 6 years, 60 years. Peace, love, unity, and respect. Kiss the one you love right now. You never know the last time it's going to be. We'll see you even further.
Beyond the veil.
Love you.
Love you guys.